and I've been working with Merge for the past 25 years. Again, my name is Alex Velasco. and today we're going to talk about the dangers of social media and short-term missions. So we're going to talk about what we've seen in the past and maybe some solutions. We also want to hear from you to see what do you think. So here we go. So first of all, something very easy. Social media. 1 second. I want to ask for your mics to be off if possible, because I'm getting a lot of feedback and it's really loud. Thank you. So social media are interactive technologies and digital channels that facilitate the creation and sharing of information, ideas, interests, and other forms of expression through virtual communities and network. I just wanted to do a abbreviation of what social media knows, but everybody knows at this point: Twitter, Facebook, and in other countries, even different apps. But that's what it is. Also, I wanted to share very quick, in the US, and for 12 to 34, the #1 social media app is Facebook. And then you see how it goes all the way down with Instagram, Pinterest, but every year has been growing steadily, especially during the pandemic. And the second one is for 55 and older. And as you can see, during this last 2 years, it's been growing. So, and just so you know, there's about 2 billion people, almost 3 billion people on Facebook. So it's something to consider. It's one that everybody uses and it can get interesting. So we're going to talk about what we've seen in the past. Dale.
So the first thing we wanted to share, of course, we all know that there's a lot of benefits to social media. It's a great way to communicate for a lot of people, obviously. That's why especially teenagers and young people, young adults use it, because it's an incredibly fantastic way to communicate with people. And we even think of these cross-cultural and international relationships that we have. It seems like, on face value, wow, this is an amazing way for us to maintain our relationships with the people that we have spent time with around the world. It's so easy. 3 billion people on Facebook itself. Almost everyone is using it. They can be on their phones wherever they want to be, and we can communicate. It just seems like, on face value, this is a boon, a great, amazing thing that can happen for mission around the world, is utilizing social media. And it allows for us to update each other so often. We can hear what's happening in Brazil and India and Zimbabwe and Sweden. We get all these immediate updates, and we learn through social media, and we get to see video and photos. And it just seems like, wow, this should be the greatest thing to ever happen to mission. It's a great place for prayer requests. And you can say your prayer requests to each other. You can do it live. You can do it Facebook. You can share it. You can spread it. I mean, man, what a great way, a vehicle to be used for prayer requests. And so we're thinking, man, social media should just explode mission. It's also a way to care for people. When people are going through tragic circumstances or crisis, social media, we can care for people, like the people in Ukraine. We can love on people and care for people, and just utilize social media. Should be, this is what you think, it should be one of the greatest tools we could ever have for mission and spreading the gospel, connecting with people, staying engaged with people around the world. The problem is the past 10 years, as social media has grown, at least in the ministry that we're a part of, with partnerships all over the world, with short-term teams, with churches and their partnerships around the world, over and over again, we have found social media to be so dangerous, to cause so many issues, and to really what a tool that could really further and benefit the spreading of the gospel and interaction around the world, even justice around the world, is not being used carefully enough. And because it's not being used in a careful way, it's actually hurting, in our opinion, many times, way more than it's helping. And so we want to give you a list of things that we have found of ways that social media have caused issues between teams and the partnerships that they have. And so I'll give you the first example when the screen gets there. Alex was being really nice when he put this together, and he put down inappropriate conduct. I wanted to put the title sex on there, but the first thing I noticed early on, I've been doing short-term trips for the Evangelical Covenant Church for 30 years. And when social media became more prevalent, I started getting more and more phone calls from people about inappropriate conduct that they were experiencing from people around the world through social media. And a lot of it early on was sexual. I remember one mom from Washington State who contacted me and said, "What kind of partners do you have in Brazil?" And I was like, "Well, what's the issue?" "Well, there's a young man in Brazil who's sending nude photos of himself to my daughter through social media. And she is horrified that he would send these pictures of himself." This was actually a pastor's son was somehow felt that it was okay for him to take photos of himself and send them to this girl that he was having this one-on-one social media relationship with. She was a girl who'd gone on a short-term trip with her youth group to Brazil, had met this young man, and they had, when she went back to the States, had a social media relationship. And then it got to this point. Now, what was interesting was the mom said that her daughter was completely innocent, absolutely innocent. Her daughter had done nothing wrong, had not done anything to have this young man do that. Now, I don't want to, say I don't know what really happened, but I got more and more phone calls like that. I had a young woman, a young adult who had gone on a trip to Mexico, had gotten to know a young man, and he started sending drawings of genitals to her, some really sexual drawings. And I'm like, okay, so, and then I got more phone calls from more people. And it just seemed like social media, when you have these one-on-one relationships, especially these cross-gender relationships, but not always, but cross-gender relationships between people of two different countries, there's completely different expectations of sexuality in the two sides. And so one responds in a way that they think is sexually appropriate, and the other side is incredibly inappropriate conduct. And what we have to do as people who organize trips are having to deal with all of this inappropriate conduct. So that to me was the number one. We've had a lot of dealings with this as a result of social media and one-on-one relationships that occur, especially between young adults and teenagers and people that they meet around the world. So that's been a tough one. That's number one. Another one has been misunderstandings. So you have people from the United States who go maybe even 8 times to a place somewhere in the world, and they've been there on 8 short-term trips, let's just say. And they feel like, well, I've been on 8 trips. I know the culture. I know the people. I sort of understand the language. Well, the reality is they haven't been to that country for 8 years. They've been there for 8 weeks. It's really hard to understand another country, another culture, another language with very little information. And so we found that through social media, more than anything else, there's been a lot of misunderstandings. When we're with our short-term teams, we can kind of make sure that they're not saying things that might be misunderstood by the pastor or misunderstood by the people that they're spending time with. But we're there at the time. But social media has no boundaries whatsoever. And so we have people saying things and they do not have the cultural intelligence and the cultural experience that what they're saying or what they're showing could easily be misunderstood in another culture. I'll give you a very funny, to me, extreme example. A family went to Ecuador and stayed with another family in their home. They stayed with them during the entire short-term trip. They really connected with that family. It was a great time together. So the family from the United States went back to the United States and they started having, online social media interaction. Well, one time the father of the family in the United States just offhandedly made a comment through social media. You guys are welcome to our home whenever you want. That's what it was, just a very simple comment. You're welcome to come. A couple of years later, I get a call from that family in the United States. They called me. They said, Dale, we don't know what to do. The family from Ecuador has just shown up at our house. They have a lot of very large luggage. They didn't tell us they were coming, and their plane return tickets are 3 months later. They're expecting to come and stay at our house for 3 months. We are not set up for that. I said, well, how did they come to this? And after we talked for a while, I found out it was that one simple comment on social media that they had made with their relationship. Oh, you're welcome to come whenever. The Ecuadorians, how they interpret it was, we could come whenever we want to the United States, go to their house and stay as long as we want. That's how they interpreted it. It can be so little, can cause such a huge misunderstanding with social media.
Excuse me. That is why it's so important to figure it out, the cultural part of it. And I want to mention, this is a bit extra, but for us as ministry, we want to have people from each country leading the trips, so that as a mediator for culture and language, there's a person there that actually understands what they're trying to say. But as far as extreme political commentary, that's not only for teams. We have talked with staff over and over, and this is one of those topics that is a no-no. That and other things that we try to make sure that, like even football, like playing soccer, I'm sorry, that's something that you might want to stay away from arguing and talking about it. But what happened to me, we try to get people together from the church and the team as much as we can for as much time, but we also organize some sort of activities so they get to share personally about what they're doing, their lives and all that. So out of nowhere, and again, I have no problems with anybody, any presidents or any, I'm not either Democratic or Republican and all that. But what happened then is that President Bush was being reelected for a second time. And this guy out of nowhere said, okay, I do have a question. Why would you vote for the same guy again? What is wrong with you? That was like what he was asking. Like, we opened to see what they wanted to, if they wanted to know something about the states. And that was his question. And me as an interpreter and also the leader of the team and all that, I turned around and it's somebody, I lived in that place where that was happening. And I said, well, he wants to know about, politics, but we're not going to get there. And it's like, well, what did he ask? When I said, some of the team got upset and some of the team got happy. As you guys know, it's always a split thing. But the problem of doing that online is that everybody gets to hear your political opinion, even though you might not have any context about what's happening, or any idea. So just keep those kind of things to yourself. I guess that's one of the most important things. It creates a lot of tension, especially because not everybody knows about deeply about what they're talking about. But it's a subject that can hurt both sides in a way. I've actually got rid of friends because when they talk about political stuff, it gets pretty aggressive, and I just don't like that in my life. I hope that makes sense. As far as misperceptions and judgments, Dale, do you have that? I think Dale froze. Can everybody hear me still, or it's frozen? I think everybody can hear me. Okay. As far as misperceptions and judgments, every culture in the world has something very different, and you can even see it in the States. You know, the same people from probably the Midwest and the way they wear swimsuits, for example, and the people from Miami might be completely different. Both of you Americans, but you know, they're smaller, maybe swimsuits, and another place will be a one piece. When you talk about different countries, it can be way more than that. It could be that, for example, in South America, people drink wine or beer almost with every, not with every meal, but when they have lunch or dinner, and something normal. Now, if you look at, not everywhere in South America, I should say, but if you look at those photos, you will be thinking, it seems like they're having a party like a lot, because you see the photos and you see and it goes also the other way around. You know, you go there to whatever country you went, and you keep saying, you know, it was an effort, we have to fundraise and all that, and then you go back home and you're taking photos of, you know, your new car, your house, even your own house. Not everybody's going to understand that you're not rich. Does that make sense? In your context, maybe you don't feel like one of the 1%ers, but for us outsiders, the whole country, it's a 1%. Does that make sense? I know for you guys, there's the people that have billions, but for us, it's for people from other countries, we see you as a part of the 1%, your entire country. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Misperceptions can go the other way as well.
yes.
We had a team go to Honduras, and they worked in a very low-income community in Tegucigalpa, and they worked with one specific family. When they went back to the States, they had online interaction with that family a little bit, but they were friends, you know, online, so they could access whatever the family in Honduras was posting. Well, it was a few years later, they saw all kinds of photos and postings from that family at Disneyland. The family went to Disneyland and showed all the great things they were doing. I remember the pastor of the church contacting me and saying, how could you take us to this place in Tegucigalpa to work with these families? They're just ripping us off because we're helping them out, and then they're going to Disneyland. And all of these perceptions came from people viewing the pages on social media. Well, I did some investigating. What had happened was that family has family in the United States, Honduran family. The family that they have in the United States saved and saved and worked extra jobs and saved and saved and saved. And the family from Tegucigalpa saved what little tiny money they could save. And everyone worked together so that this one family from Honduras could go with their extended family from the United States and have a once in a lifetime trip to Disneyland. It had nothing to do with poverty or how much money that family made, etc. It was just something that their family did in the States. They wanted to do something special. It took a lot of work because of these misperceptions and judgments that were made solely based on what was posted on social media pages to kind of redo, hey, working with these people is important. Community development in this area is important, but social media did its best to try to ruin that. So Alex, talk about the begging and the asking.
Well, that's always something complicated, talking about begging and if you should do it or not. But something that happens is once you have a direct connect with somebody, especially a country or an area that has, for some reason, gotten used to this support of Americans or Americans bringing things and all that, then once you give your social media or your phone number, then you're going to get a lot of those, and you can even do it by praying. You can pray, you can say, we're going through this situation and we need to fundraise about this much. Please pray for it. And in reality, we're fishing for, and I'm not saying me, but people are fishing to see what the response is from others. I mean, it gets really hard. Even our own staff has had problems in the past with these things. And that's something that we don't want to do. We want to learn from all this 20-something years and know that it happened way back, but we learned from those mistakes and said, you can't be doing this. It's the same. You go and visit somebody for 1 week and you start having these conversations and having this relationship. And that's when it starts happening. I have somebody I know from Africa. I went to that place maybe 15 years ago or more. And that guy still contacts me on a regular basis and asks me for something. And I visit Facebook once every month just to make sure that whoever needed to say something to that, I can get it. But still to this day it happens. That and phone calls. If I give my phone number to somebody, sometimes it gets misused, and it's pretty sad because you started to have this relationship that is not support. It's not a blessing, but a burden to be asked for things constantly.
Another area that we've been kind of surprised about is the exploitation of minors on social media. I mean, we already know there's a lot of exploitation of minors on social media. And we've been kind of surprised how short-term teams will go around the world taking photos of children and minors and just simply post them without any concern at all on social media. It's kind of amazing because it's the same church that doesn't allow any photography of the children in their own church without permission. It doesn't allow photography of their own youth in their own church without permission. They go to a camp where photography is not allowed. Everything has to be with permission. It's almost like we can't post things about American kids because that would be exploiting minors. But it's okay to do it of kids as long as they're not from our country. That just doesn't seem to fit for me. To be able to go to another country and take pictures of children and youth and post them on our social media, whatever that does for people to try to gain sympathy or whatever it is, and maybe have not asked permission from the parents to do that. That's another, for us, a danger of social media.
As far as language, and this is a very difficult one for me, because I love when teams know the language of the area, whether it's Spanish or Portuguese or whatever the language is. I love that, but sometimes that gets in the way more. You thinking that you understand Spanish, or you use Google Translate, and and just it's like, oh, I'm sure he said this. Man, it's completely out of context. And I can tell you that because I have translated and interpret, I don't even know how many things. I've helped with books and papers and all kinds of things, but language, it's not just the part of the Spanish, it's a cultural part of that place that can mean something completely different. So a lot of times somebody says something like, our church is praying for a truck. And then he goes to, wait, what I want to tell you, that's the other person, is that I'm going to take it to our church and pray for it. And what the other people understood, again, also, they're both bilingual in a way. And the other people understood, that locals, that this church was buying a vehicle for this church. And it got worse in social media because they were all sending message and who's telling the truth and why he got to this. And it was just a small mistake. So language is pretty important, but you have to remember it has a cultural tone to it. And sometimes we think that you understand something and it's not what you thought. It's the same in the States. If I understand English and one of you say cool, if I was literal or translated and Google, it might say, frío, which is cold. And that would not mean anything in Spanish. Nobody would say that. So I hope that makes sense. And I see these messages online going back and forth, and they're not even talking about the same thing. It's so complicated. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, this happened when Facebook started, I think, but I was helping a pastor in Mexico to set up his Yahoo email account for the first time, and also Facebook. So I was happy. I'm gonna make it my friend. This thing just started and it's great. And so I made it my friend, and obviously you have your family too. I have my cousin, and he's a pilot. He's single, and he's not a believer. So he's sharing photos of the friends that he has, and at the beach, and this is a model. He will put the photos of very beautiful women, and the pastors approached me and said, "Hey, what's happening with this? Why do you have photos of women in in skimpy outfits?" And it's a huge problem because I'm not doing that. There's nothing that I'm doing. And I have to explain, not everybody understand that your friend or your relatives can put photos and they end up in your page. Not everybody understands that. And still to this day, not everybody understands that. So we have to be even more careful about who we directly are doing this stuff. And I learned right away, and obviously my amazing cousin is not my friend anymore. I got to say that he's not my friend. It's very sad, but it is what it is.
I took reDEX training in England for a couple of weeks, 2 times. reDEX training was to help short-term trip organizations to be as secure and safe with teams as possible. It was a required training by the Evangelical Covenant Church, and it was to help make sure that our teams and our missionaries and everybody was as safe as possible, that we put into practice all the best case scenarios for keeping everyone safe. One thing that they said was social media is putting people's lives in danger. They said short-term teams will post online while they're on the trip. And it seems like a nice thing to do. We want all the people of the church to pray for us. We want them to know we're okay. If there's youth on the trip, we want the parents to know their kids are still alive, whatever. And so they're posting on social media. They said that there are so many people on the dark web, etc., that are watching social media. You are basically advertising where you are, what you are doing, who you are with, and how incredibly vulnerable you are. You are putting yourself out there in a way that anyone could come in with kidnappings or with theft or with whatever they might want to do. You are putting yourself in a horrible position by posting on social media while you're on a trip. That is an incredibly, for them, they would say that was an ignorant, incredibly ignorant thing to do. But even after the trip, when we're posting things about people that are doing things in sensitive locations and we post online, people and even governments are watching what we are posting online. And we have a staff person in Nicaragua, and Nicaragua was in a really bad place a couple of years ago. She was begging people, please do not put me on any of your social media pages because you're making me a target of the Sandinista government. We don't think about these things, but these are some of the things that social media can do.
Well, as I was mentioning before, our cultures are different, right? Every culture is different. And even what I would consider in the States, there's an inner culture per place, you know, and no matter what you guys said, for somebody, for an outsider like me, I'm also an American via my wife. She's American. But one of the things that I noticed right away is that even in the States, it's not the same to be in the Midwest than to be in the east of the country, the South. It's completely different cultures. And there are times that we show things, or we, we get to show examples of things that we have, or something that is happening, and we're being insensitive to the people that we are trying to be friends with. And sometimes we use language that might not be appropriate for that place. But they'll help me out because I was trying to move my camera and I lost. You have another example of as far as cultural insensitivity? Just give me 10 seconds.
You shared those examples when you did misunderstanding, so that's fine. So
okay.
But I think everyone can get that. So
yeah.
So I don't know, just from our experience, we've had so many issues with social media and with short-term teams that in a way it just seems like, go to the next slide, Alex. It just seems almost insurmountable. And one of the difficult things for us is we have no control over it. That's what scares us. We have no control over it. But we as a ministry, we want to hear from you because we're asking the question too, what in the world can we do about this? What can we do about social media? We'll share a couple ideas that we have that we would love to learn from you, because you probably have some great ideas that we'd like to learn from. The big thing that we started doing about 8 years ago is every team that we have, we send a large attachment that gives a lot of the examples that we just shared with you. And we keep adding more and more examples to this to find out the dangers of social media. Then what we do is with the team leader and the church and the hosts, the people that receive the teams, we create an agreement, social media agreement before the trip. We ask the team leader and the hosts that what would be created is one platform and one group social media platform that they will use together. I'll just use Facebook as an example, so that the team and the hosts, that we will help them create a group, a private group between the team members and the hosts, that they can communicate with each other in social media, and they can only do it in a group way, a group chat way, or they can only post in a group way. So if you're from the States and you're communicating with someone via social media to anyone that are in the hosts, you're doing it, but your entire group and their entire group can see everything that you've posted between the two. And it's private, so it's not something that's, anyone else can see. So anyone from the local church or the local ministry, international ministry, anything they say or they post can go to the team in the United States or Canada. And then we like it when they invite us to be a part of it, so we can go in and we can just kind of monitor. And if things are being said and misunderstood or misinterpreted or anything that might go the wrong direction, we are able to try to nip those things in the bud before they get worse. So we can kind of, with our experience between the cultures, to kind of see what the communication is going on. So we can't enforce this. We can't make it happen, but this is an agreement we ask for. Now, we have noticed a huge drop, especially in sexual photos, because who's going to do that in a group platform? We've had a lot less begging because there's a lot more, wait, how come you're asking? And we've had a lot less problems between the two. As a result of this, we've seen a lot better communication, a lot better interaction through social media because we've tried to limit it to only a certain people. We've kept it private, and it has to all be in a group at the same time. We've asked them not to have any one-on-one relationships between people in their group and someone from the host. That is the one that always causes the problems. That's where all the problems that you just read have pretty much come not from group chatting or group interaction. They've come from one-on-one interactions. And so we say, please, no one-on-one. And it's not always the short-term team that we have to worry about. A lot of times it is actually the hosts, and they want that one-on-one interaction. And we have to try to keep that from taking place because that can be damaging. And there's also the issue with minors. We always say, look, there's no way you should ever allow minors to have any of these interactions and engagements between each other. That's really, really a bad road to head down. Since we've implemented that about 8 years ago, again, I would say that our social media issues have dropped dramatically. And it has helped because a lot of churches have tried to understand this situation and have tried to do things in a better way. Alex has some other suggestions.
Yes. But I'm going to leave it there. One of the things that we would like to suggest is to be able to train your staff, talk to them, make sure they know the dangers, make sure they understand what social media is good for, make sure that they are trying to make these rules and follow them. And so they're also part of the idea of the movement of not doing this. Train your team for sure. Make some sort of an agreement. Make sure that everybody understands that and why is it important to not do it. I would say also train yourself, understand better social media and what to share, what not to share. It can be very, very delicate and complicated, but if you try to make this agreement happen and make sure that you already talk to your staff and they are aware of this and they're going to keep, mentioning this to the team while it's happening, and the team itself also know this, and the host also knows this, because to us it's very important to train both parts so they both know what's happening, not just the Americans, but also the people that are receiving, the locals, the global church. They are the ones, they also have to receive this knowledge. And as you're with your staff, they'll be able to say, okay, we agree on not doing this, so we're not going to do this, and these are the reasons why they're happening. If you do that, you'll be able to get rid of a lot of these problems, and the consequences will be different also. Yes, as everybody knows, social media can be amazing, but it also can be very dangerous. And now we would like to hear from you, see if you have any other ideas. Dale, go ahead.
I just want to share one more idea.
Yeah,
everybody does have a pent-up need, though, to have interaction with the people they spent time with when they go on a short-term trip. So one thing that we have found that has been helpful to release some of that pent-up desire for information and communication relationship is to create online events between yourself and the hosts
Oh,
after the trip is over. So you want to set those up in a professional way and have, let's say, a local church that you were with, that you set a date, they're going to be online, whether it's Zoom or whatever you guys use, and you're going to be online, and you have a 1 hour interaction. That's, you kind of organize it together with your hosts and do online interactions from time to time. That might help release some of the desire to interact with people on social media all the time, to maintain relationship, to know what's going on. Do it. You organize it. You're the one that organizes the interaction. I would also like to suggest, it's something that we do with all of our teams. Our staff participate in all of those online interactions because they're the cultural interpreters between the two. Yeah, even when you're doing it as a group and you don't have that cultural interpreter, things could be said in a way that's misunderstood. So you got to be careful with that. But even like Zoom has technology where you can have, what is it when you interpret right away? What is that called, Alex? It's like the interpretation can be
simultaneous translation.
Simultaneous interpretation. Zoom even has that option. So you can do some really great things online. And you might want to find some people who can help you do that. That might be a way to release some of that desire that people have. All right, now please help us as a ministry to do better. So you can Alex, you can turn off the sharing. We'd love to hear your ideas on how to deal with this issue.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Do you hear me? I can't tell.
Yes.
Okay. This is my experience with working people. Two experiences. It's a misunderstanding or context kind of issue. Like one time we went to a country, right? And I told them I was American, I have a Toyota, and I travel overseas. And they thought I was rich. And I mean, in their lifetime, they don't think they ever buy a car. So I gotta be easy on the Americanness and having a Toyota and stuff like that. So I mean, and another experience is speaking of translation, right? So it was a COVID story. So I said, so-and-so passed COVID to so-and-so, right? And when under translation, it sounded like somebody died. So that's really bad. I mean, it's through a translation software. So those are my, being a little sensitive to what you think you got, not kind of like, sounds like boasting, right? But you have a car and you live in America and you travel overseas. And the other one is, don't count on the translation software. Really bad when lucky that person replied back to me. She thought somebody said, this is terrible, somebody died, right? They treat me translated in their language to English. I said, no. Nobody died, just somebody got sick and they're okay now. So that's my comment about translation and being sensitive to the country that you're at, because they're, quote, materially poorer than the country I'm from. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Cassandra, I see your
Hi,
hand up.
just a reminder of something that I have experienced several times, and this is a reminder for leaders, team leaders, especially when they have high school, college age groups, to be respectful of whatever that Wi-Fi is or whatever the rules are, especially if you stay and I'm talking about times when I was staying maybe in a missions compound and there were teams coming in and out. And there were teams that would come in and literally rearrange the entire Wi-Fi, change it, just completely transform what the place had set up because that's what they wanted to do. And then they used it and did what they were supposed to do, and then they left. And the people that were living there, they had a lot of work to do to change it back, because they were doing things that was really affecting the cost and everything. So just in terms of preparing your teams to be respectful, you're in somebody else's house, and you can't go in and just ramshack like you're in your own kitchen. You're not at home. So that's all.
Thank you.
And you mean people can survive without Wi-Fi for a whole week? Really? Is that possible?
That's what I wanted to say. And part of this training is also to tell the kids to leave their, communication inside their backpacks or their suitcase device, communication device, so they don't have it with them. We try to make sure that they're present. If they have the phone out, which now you see it everywhere, then you don't get to know people. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Anybody have ideas? This is a really tough one.
Just comment, thank you. I like the presentation. It just makes me more aware of when I work in a we call cross-cultural ministry. Just it's a good reminder. I've been to a few trips, but it just yeah, and even I went to closed countries, so there's even more stuff that you'd be more careful of. Besides all that listing, there's even more stuff in working with a closed country. It's yeah. And like I've been to orphanages. You gotta be really careful with that, because we're dealing with kids, and minors and stuff. And it just the list would get bigger. Let's say that.
And I'm a full-time missionary of the Evangelical Covenant Church, and we have a rule: no one is allowed to post anything on social media about their children on social media as a missionary of the covenant, because you could get kidnapped and ransomed, and there's just so many things you have to worry.
One thing one place I went to was the orphanage, high walls and barbed wire on and there's somebody at the gate at all times. At nighttime it's locked. So the reason they had the barbed wire on the, there's an orphanage, right? What could happen? They're worried about kidnapping,
All right, Alex, why don't you do our little promo at the end here, and then we'll have our last promo and last thing that we're going to do. Go for it, Alex. Just short, what is Merge, Alex, and what makes it unique?
What is Merge? Merge is an organization that for more than 30 years now has led teams from the US, Canada, and now other countries too, little by little, to we have opportunities in 30 plus countries nowadays. So yeah, that's basically what we are, a team sending agency. Sometimes we come up with different names. We don't want to call it mission trips anymore. We want to call them service trips, but that's who we are. And what is very different about us is that we train our teams before they go in advance. We ask them to go on a pre-trip also to kind of figure it out, how the area, what the area is like. Another thing that distinguishes from other ministries, but again, I'm not complaining or comparing or anything, just this is who we are. We try to have people from the country that we're serving at. That's our staff, and we train them and we spend time with them, and they have already some sort of a connection with Americans, so they're not new to the culture, and they're really good facilitating that, way better than I would do in another country. And I've done it. I've had to do it before, but the more I visit other places from other countries, the more I notice that I needed locals to do it properly. So that's something that it's very important to us. Again, we train the teams that are going. We also train the hosts, and we have people in country that keep up with the hosts. So our staff will be able to tell regularly what's happening in that area, if they're doing okay, or if they're doing more information, or if they have to travel there. With so it's not only staff, they're not only they're coaches. They spend time with you the entire trip, they train you, and yeah, I don't know if you want to add more, Dale. But
Well,
that
the
to
other
me is
thing that I like about what you guys are doing at Merge is your organization actually run by the global church. So
yes.
you're actually run by non-Americans. So it's actually a group of non-Americans that are running short-term trips for Americans. So most organizations are run by Americans and use partners around the world, but this actually is an organization run by people who aren't from the United States. So if you want a little bit different flavor on a short-term trip, you want to try Merge, because it's actually the global churches running the ministry, not Americans in partnership with it. It is a little bit different flavor. So, all right, you want to finish then? Okay.
Thank you guys very much for sharing with us some of the dangers and some of the ideas. It's given you, I'm sure, a lot of things to think about and consider in your own ministries. And I'm going to have Alex share one more slide with you about an upcoming workshop that SOE is sharing or offering, and that is March 9th to the 11th. So just a couple of weeks away, and a practical workshop of some things that will help carry you into your next training. So you can check out that QR code. I think it's been posted a few other places as well, discounts for those who are SOE members and groups. So check that out and enjoy the rest of your time. Also, don't forget to fill out the evaluation form for this workshop, which I shared in the chat. So a link for that. So thank you again, guys, very much. And everyone enjoy the remainder of the conference. Bye.